مساء الخير واهلا بحضراتكم. لقاء يتجدد وجناب السفير ودولة جديدة وجولة جديدة في إحدى دول العالم. معانا النهاردة سفير دولة علاقتها بمصر بتمتد إلى ما يقرب من 150 سنة تقريبا. هي مملكة بلجيكا. يمكن لما بنقول بلجيكا بنتذكر بناء مصر الجديدة، بنتذكر قصر البارون، بنتذكر العلامات المميزة في مصر الجديدة اللي بتدل على الثقافة والمعمار اللي قام به بناة مصر الجديدة من بلجيكا. الحقيقة احنا استضفنا من سابق سعادة السفيرة المقيمة في مصر سفيرة مملكة بلجيكا، واتكلمنا عن تطورات هذه العلاقة وعن مدى عمقها وعن الثقافة والحياة في بلجيكا. لكن الحقيقة كل مدة زي ما حضراتكم عارفين احنا بنشوف مين السادة السفراء الجدد اللي موجودين اللي يقدروا يكلمونا اكتر عن تطورات العلاقة بين دولهم وبين مصر. وعلشان كده النهاردة معانا سفير مملكة بلجيكا بجمهورية مصر العربية اللي كان في يوم من الأيام زائر في مصر كسائح، ولكن بعد سنوات طويلة جه من 2020 علشان يكون سفير بلجيكا في مصر. أكيد عنده انطباعات مختلفة في هذه المدة ما بين ما سبق وما بين ما نحن فيه الآن عن مصر، وأكيد عنده كلام كتير هيقوله عن العلاقات بين مصر وبلجيكا. بيسعدنا النهاردة أن يكون معنا سعادة السفير فرانسوا كورنيه ديليسيوس سفير مملكة بلجيكا لدى جمهورية مصر العربية وجمهورية السودان. Nice to meet you sir and welcome in our program.
شكرا شيرين خانم. السلام عليكم. أنا مبسوط جدا هنا. أنا أتشكر عشان الانترفيو، لكن عربي صغير قوي.
أيوة.
أنا
You speak a little bit of Arabic.
أنا هتكلم إنجليزي.
Okay, we will talk in English, but it's a good introduction for us and thank you. Thank you. سعادة السفير طبعا رحب بيكم باللغة العربية، لكن طبعا هو بيتكلم عربي بسيط فحابب ان الحوار يكون باللغة الإنجليزية. I appreciate your nice words.
That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I appreciate your nice words in Arabic.
Thank you.
Sir, we will start to talk about your coming to Egypt since almost 2 years, and your previous coming in Egypt since many years. What's the difference you have seen in Egypt?
At the same time, very similar and very different. I think the real difference is the development of new cities around Cairo, and of course the enormous development of infrastructure. When I came, it was 30 years ago, and there was half of the population there is today. Yet I must say traffic was more difficult 30 years ago than today.
But what's your impression about the developments in Egypt and the infrastructures developments in Egypt?
It is very impressive. I was having lunch today with a very high-level industrialist from Belgium at that. And they were very impressed by the fact that the ring road, for example, was enlarged so quickly. What is done here in 1 year would take 20 years in Belgium and would maybe never be done. So yes, it entails suffering for the local population, but it is done, and it's a way to the future. So it impressed very much my Belgian businessman, I must say.
What about your impression about the new cities, the new capital of Egypt? Do you see it?
Yes, we have been invited to the new capital. It's going ahead extremely quickly. The vision of Egypt it's a very grandiose vision to make an enormous conurbation from Cairo to the Suez Canal. It's extremely impressive, but of course it takes a lot of time to develop. So it's a question of 20 years to see it happening. But I must say the resolve of the government to build the new capital is quite impressive.
سعادة السفير الحقيقة بيتكلم عن التطورات في البنية التحتية والتطورات في الطرق والكباري في مصر، وبيقول قد ايه يعني اللي انا بشوفه اتعمل في سنة ممكن يتعمل في بلجيكا في 20 سنة. حقيقة فخر يعني. وبيقول كمان انه انا قلت له ان هو كان موجود في مصر من عده سنوات وجه مصر كسفير من تقريبا سنتين، ايه الفرق؟ فقال لي هو الفرق انه طبعا مصر اكثر ازدحاما دلوقتي، لكن طبعا التطور اللي حصل زي ما قلت لحضراتكم تطور كبير. We'll start about your diplomatic career and about your stations before you're coming to Cairo. What you are going to say about this trip and diplomatic trip?
I have a mixed career, which is mainly focused on the European Union, because the European Union is essential for Belgium. So there is a big, I would say, institutional work in Brussels. So I'm a specialist in the European Union, but I'm also a specialist in Africa.
Yeah.
And there I have some experience. I have been director for Africa relations, and I've been ambassador to Burundi. About the Middle East, my only experience so far is as a young diplomat. I was posted in Tehran. But of course I'm a son of diplomats. So I lived in Morocco, I lived in Lebanon.
You are a son of a diplomat.
I'm a son of a diplomat. We are 3 diplomats in my family, my father and his 2 sons.
Yeah, you and another son.
Me and my brother are both diplomats.
That's why you like this career?
Yes, I always wanted to be a diplomat. I never wanted any other
dream.
job. Yes, it has always been my dream. And the minute I became a diplomat, I felt at ease in my job.
I saw in your CV you studied in Morocco. You studied in Morocco?
Well, for my school, my schooling, yes, I studied 4 years in Morocco at the French school, and also a little bit in Spain, a little bit in Switzerland, a bit everywhere.
سعادة السفير الحقيقة بيقول ان هو من عائلة دبلوماسية، والده دبلوماسي واخوه دبلوماسي، ويمكن هو درس في مرحلة متقدمة من دراسته في المغرب، وكان مع والده في هذه الأثناء. والده كان سفير وهو طبعا كان لسه طالب، وهو كان من زمان نفسه يكون سفير، يعني هو ما كانش حابب يكون أي حاجة تانية غير ان هو يكون دبلوماسي. والحقيقة كمان بيتكلم عن انه يعني شغله وعمله كدبلوماسي كان في اكتر من دول افريقية زي بوروندي، كمان في ايطاليا، وتعامله كان مع القارة الإفريقية وطبعا مع دول الاتحاد الأوروبي، لأنه طبعا يعني التعامل مع الاتحاد الأوروبي أساسي بالنسبة لبلجيكا، لأنه يعني المقر موجود هناك. So we will talk about your relations with African continent and your relations with African people as a whole. What's your opinion about the relations between Africa and Belgium as a whole?
There are 2 Africas for Belgium. There is Africa at large, and then there is Central Africa. As you know, we have very special relations with Central Africa because we were the colonial power in Congo, Burundi, and Rwanda. And with those countries, relations are extremely strong, but also very difficult, because they have things to thank us, but they also things to reproach us. So it asks for a peculiar approach, I would say, and an extra respect for the people we talk to in Central Africa. But then our African past, if I may say, did give us experience in the business field, in the cultural field, to deal with African country. And Africa is still a continent where we have a big and extensive diplomatic network, for example.
So we will talk also about your relations and about your experience here in Egypt and the places you have been, the cities you have been. What's your favorite dish? What's your impression about Egypt as a whole?
That's a lot of questions. Look, we haven't traveled so much, my wife and myself, because it was COVID and it was a bit complicated. And okay, so we haven't moved a lot. We haven't seen El Said, the south of Egypt. We have been to Alexandria, which I love as a city because it's a kind of a place where Europe and the Middle East meet, and that's beautiful. And I like the atmosphere. We have I have a special taste for Islamic art, so I visited quite a few Islamic art monuments in Cairo.
Islamic Museum.
The Islamic Museum, of course, and then the mosques. My favorite mosque being Ibn Tulun.
Ibn Tulun, yes, it's fabulous, yeah.
Which is by far my favorite mosque, probably in the Arab world, I would say. It's very moving.
Why you say that?
Because there's...
What's your impression about the architecture there?
Well, first, the architecture is very pure. It's a very primitive mosque. It's the first type of Islamic mosque that existed.
There's a museum also inside the place of Ibn Tulun.
Yes,
Kritleya Museum.
There's a Geyer Anderson Museum, which is a little beauty, extremely gracious, full of grace, but it doesn't match the deep spirituality of the Ibn Tulun Mosque, which is, I find, really a national treasure and a treasure for humanity.
الحقيقة سعادة السفير لما سألته عن علاقته بمصر وانطباعه عن مصر قال لي ان هو يمكن عشان الكورونا ما قدرش ان هو يزور العديد من الاماكن هو وزوجته، لكن زار بعض الاماكن زي اسكندرية، وبيحب جدا السياحة الاثرية الاسلامية، بيحب جدا التاريخ الاسلامي والسياحة المرتبطة بيها، وبالنسبة له افضل مسجد موجود في مصر هو مسجد ابن طولون. سألته ليه؟ قال لي لانه الحقيقة الشغل اللي فيه والمعمار اللي فيه رائع ويعتبر من افضل المساجد على مستوى العالم. Let's make us talk about the cultural cooperation between Belgium and Egypt and the development in architecture sites here in Cairo and participating of Belgium in this field.
I think Egypt is known in Belgium since hundreds of years for Egyptology. There's a specialist interest in Belgium for Egyptology, and the king's family, for example, is deeply personally involved in this field. So they are very much acquainted with the topic, and the king follows all discoveries with great attentions. So that's a little bit how Belgium knows Egypt. It goes without saying that plenty of people in Belgium looked at the Pharaoh's Parade last year, which was a world success in this field. So I had plenty of friends calling me afterwards telling me, well, this was fantastic, were you there? Fantastic. So no, there are a few fields that I would like to develop. And for example, comic strips. Comic strips is a special Belgian art, like Tintin, like the Schtroumpf, you know, those very joyful, very amusing, light caricature. This is something...
Do you make any concerts here in Egypt, or...?
we'll make an exhibition on comic strips. In November at the Opera, there will be an exhibition with Belgian original drawings for comic strips. So this will be an interesting thing.
It's to introduce a Belgian culture to Egyptian people.
To introduce the Belgian culture of comic strips to Egyptian people. And actually, Egyptians are the inventor of comic strips, because with the hieroglyphs, that's precisely this means of expression. That's drawings expressing things.
Yeah, of course.
That's of the essence.
And what about the participation of Belgium in the development of Baron Palace?
Well, Baron Palace was built by a baron, the Baron Opin, of course.
And all Heliopolis city.
All Heliopolis was built by Baron Opin, and Belgium had a role in restoring the Baron Opin. We financed a part of it. We gave some advice, and so we are very proud that the Baron's Palace is at the heart. It is dear to the heart of people from Cairo.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the Baron.
Yeah, of course.
And it's a trademark for Belgium.
Yeah. Of course. So we'll talk also about Belgian culture and Belgian cuisine.
Belgian cuisine is very rich in all the sense of the word, which means it's a bit fat, but it's kind of a French cuisine. It's kind of a French cuisine with regional accents, with fish, with lots of dishes which are cooked in beer. Stews that are cooked in beer. So I would say it's delicious, and Belgium is a place where you can eat very good food in small restaurants.
What's your favorite food in Belgium?
Something that's
and
not
your popular food.
That's something that's not eaten in Egypt, and that's raw beef meat. Raw beef meat with French fries.
French fries.
Kind of very simple, but very tasty.
What about the museums in Belgium, the diamond museums, the chocolate museum? They are very famous and special.
The museums in Belgium are plenty. We've got a beautiful Egyptology museum, by the way, in the center of Brussels, because it was Baron Capar. Baron Capar, Mr. Jean Capar was an Egyptologist, very famous in the 19th century in Belgium. But there are also museums about tapestries, for example, because we have got a very rich past in the Middle Ages, where we produced tapestries for the whole world.
Special architecture.
Tapestry is carpets, basically, but carpets that you would hang on the walls. And it's gigantic things. It's things like 10 meters on 10, or things like this. It's really big. And it's minutiously made by hand, of course, in the Middle Ages.
What about the royal palace and the architecture?
We have several royal palaces. The Palace of Brussels is the 19th century palace, very majestic. Then you've got the King's Home, which is the Laken Palace, which is 18th century. And a few other palaces in the countryside, which are more castles where the king can go hunting or just for the weekends. They are visitable. You can visit them once or twice a year. But the most beautiful thing is the greenhouses, the royal greenhouses, which is enormous glass greenhouses built on the 19th century, with a fantastic collection of flowers inside. And those can be visited in May. It's 4 or 5 hectares of glass greenhouses, Art Nouveau style. You have to imagine yourself. It's extraordinary. But you have to hurry up, because you can visit them only 2 weeks a year, when the flowers are blooming.
What about the chocolate museum?
Well, we don't expose chocolate; we eat it basically. And yes,
but you make some cartoon characters with chocolate in this museum, I think so.
Yes, we do. We do have, but
you have a very special chocolate.
The most interesting thing with chocolate is just to eat it, of course. And yes, no, we have several hundred kinds of chocolate, but artisans that make chocolates, and every day there are more. People decide to make chocolate, and they make their own pralines.
Yeah.
And so it's not unusual that
700 kinds of chocolate?
No, 700, several hundred.
Several hundred.
So it's not unusual that if you go in a small village, you find an artisan that makes his own chocolate.
They are innovative for chocolate.
And they are good usually. They are sometimes less good, sometimes better, but it's usually very, very good chocolate. So yes, indeed, it's a land of
innovators.
Land of chocolate and of beer.
Yeah.
But beer and chocolate doesn't go together.
Thank you and welcome in our program. I really appreciate your coming. Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
سعادة السفير كلمني الحقيقة عن التعاون الثقافي بين مصر وبين بلجيكا والجانب الثقافي الجميل اللي بيمتد لقرون بعيدة في بلجيكا والسياحة التاريخية، المتاحف، متحف الشوكولاتة، الأنواع العديدة من الشوكولاتة اللي هم بيتميزوا بيها في بلجيكا، إنه حتى في القرى ليهم أنواع معينة من الشوكولاتة هم بيصنعوها، يعني هم مخترعين لأنواع متعددة من الشوكولاتة. عن القصر الملكي اللي موجود في بروكسل العاصمة، وقصر ملكي موجود في مكان تاني في الكونتري سايد علشان الصيد والاستمتاع بالفترات الصيفية، وعندهم البيوت اللي بتتمتع بالخضار والزهور المتميزة جدا في فصل الربيع، البيوت الخضراء. الحقيقة عندهم الطبيعة ساحرة بجانب السياحة التاريخية والأماكن التاريخية اللي ليها ماضي عريق، وده اللي عامل اتصال بيننا وبينهم حتى في الأماكن التاريخية وترميمها هنا في مصر، والتعاون في هذا المجال، والتعاون في ترميم قصر البارون اللي طبعا بناه البارون إمبان البلجيكي الأصل. شكرا لحضراتكم، واستنونا دايما حلقات جديدة من جناب السفير. بنشكر سعادة السفير فرانسوا كورنيه ديليسيوس، سفير مملكة بلجيكا لدى جمهورية مصر العربية وجمهورية السودان. شكرا وإلى اللقاء.
خلقت مبرأ من